Hello, everybody. It's been it's fucking just it's been a crazy ass week. Um, I hope everybody's been having fun. Week hasn't been bad or anything. It's just been super busy. Probably the busiest week I've had since I moved out here to Winnipeg and started my new job. Looks like there's a comment. You know full well this Pokemon thing looks extremely autistic. You sound intelligent enough, but whatever. Who who am I to deny one their vision? Well, I don't know. I've talked about why I have an Espeon a lot of times. I mean, firstly, no one cared who I was before I evolved from an Eevee. I mean, that's part of it. The other part is I just figured like I like Espeons, I like cats. Um, I it shows I don't take myself too seriously than having like one of the Roman statues or some like big thing like that. Some like classical painting. Nothing wrong with that. I just kind of wanted to show a little bit of my goofier side. So yeah, it's been a crazy week. What does it rain? Meow, meow, meow. Here, do you want to sit on my lap, girl? There we go. There's a good kitty. Um, so sorry, I was just distracted because Rain wanted attention. But what was I thinking of? But yeah, no, it's just been a crazy week. Super busy, lots of stuff going on, both in the world and here. I haven't really had time to make a video. I had done the Witch Hunter Robin one like a week or two ago, so this is kind of just for sometimes I just feel like I kind of want to do a stream on Friday and just kind of summarize all the insane shit that happened because so much stuff happens some weeks. It's just like I can't do a video on everything individually. So before we get into our first topic, I just want to start off with a massive Biden L. So this is one of this is just Biden. Uh, where is it? I need to change my Brave. So okay, let me just see here. Let me just give me a second. I'm a professional. How do I change my default search? Because Brave default search sucks. Dicks. Uh, search engine. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay, so Biden met with some members of Delta Force. Um, uh, and he decided to post an unedited picture of him meeting with members of Delta Force. Now, as you guys may or may not know, Delta Force is probably the most elite of the elite special forces units within the American Army. They do counterterrorism, black ops, all that kind of stuff. And Biden was like, you know what? We'll just take a picture of me shaking hands with them and put it up and not censor or take out any of the faces. And that's going to be a fucking great idea. So Biden decided to do that. This person here censored it, but hundreds of thousands of people saw the faces of the Delta Force operators. So I mean, that's cool. That's cool. Once again, the just the endless um, W's for Biden. So. So the first story I wanted to talk about today was the ongoing nonsense with the Republicans.
People saw
The Republicans speakership contest. So I kind of wanted to do a video on this, but I kind of just lost my train of thought. And I figured I'd just kind of cover it in a kind of a weekly compilation kind of thing. Okay, so for those of you who don't remember, back in I think it was March. I'm trying to remember when it was. But so the Republicans won a small majority in the 2022 election, and they had to elect a speaker. Now, the person who they decided on was Kevin McCarthy. However, there is a section within the Republican Party called the House Freedom Caucus, who are kind of the furthest right people within the Republican Party. That's like Matt Gaetz, I think Paul Gosar's in it, Jim Jordan, those kind of guys. And they didn't like Kevin McCarthy. Now, to my understanding, Kevin McCarthy is actually not that bad when it comes to the issues. Like he was a big step up from uh, what was it again? Boehner or Paul Ryan. But a lot of guys didn't want him to become leader. There was a lot of concerns. So you had a couple rounds of voting where random people decided to vote for, where they voted for random people. So we had like a vote for Lee Zeldin. We had votes for, I think someone voted for Trump. We had votes for Jim Jordan. All these random votes. And so the Freedom Caucus sat down with McCarthy in the back room. They came up with a deal, and then they voted for him. Now, at the time, everyone was saying that this was a massive L, that this was humiliating. And I was just kind of like, well, isn't this kind of how it's supposed to work? Like, the party elected a speaker. Some people wanted certain things out of the speaker. They talked to him. They got their, like, the stuff they wanted, they negotiated, and then he won. Like, I didn't really get why it was a massive L. Like, isn't that just kind of how things work in politics? It's give and take, and you negotiate. So Kevin McCarthy promised a bunch of things. He changed it so that a single member of the caucus could call on him to vacate and have a new speaker election, or a election to get him removed as speaker. Um, you had that. You also had um, what else did you have? He promised that a bunch of things would be brought up for a vote, that certain House Freedom Caucus members would get certain committee chairs, stuff like that. So he made all these promises, and he was given the speakership on those grounds. So no one really expected anything special from McCarthy. I think everybody knew he has a razor thin majority. He can't reliably get enough votes to get anything passed. I think people were generally speaking very understanding of this. The issue is he was just passing legislation without any negotiation with the Democrats. So, like, once again, Democrats control the Senate, Democrats control the presidency. You're not going to get anything conservative passed. The complaint, though, was that they were getting nothing. So it would be like the example that Real American Politics gave when I was watching one of his streams is that, okay, so the Democrats want to increase spending by 2%, and the Republicans want to reduce it by 4%. Logic suggests you try to compromise for 2%. Even 1% or 0% would be an improvement. No one was expecting the moon. Everybody knew that the situation was really bad. But like what McCarthy continually did was he'd be like, "Oh, I got a 1.9% increase to spending instead of 2%." Or I got like 2% increase to spending, and that's like the deal. So the deal was basically just he gave the Democrats 100% of what they wanted. And if people were expecting him to get like big spending cuts or pass any of this shit, I don't think anyone was. If there were people, then that was unreasonable. Also, just some things they wanted him to bring to the floor, and then with the understanding that they would get voted down in the Senate, but they wanted to put the Democrats on record for voting against it. So that was a big issue. And I think that is a reasonable criticism of McCarthy. There was just a bunch of other things he was supposed to bring up. The big problem is the U.S. every couple of years has this massive fight about the debt ceiling, where they need to pass a budget, they need a continuing resolution. I don't actually, if someone could maybe post in the chat the last time the US has had an actual budget, it might have been like the early 90s or something like that. Basically, they just pass a continuing resolution every year that the thing just kind of chugs along as it was going is what I often will see whenever whenever that kind of thing is happening. So like he was just going to pass the current one basically with no amendments to it, and stuff like that. And people were like, "Look, we get that it's going to be most of what Democrats want, but could you just put in like border security?" Like one of the suggestions was, okay, if we have to pass Ukraine funding, you have to include border security. So maybe Biden gets $40 billion for Ukraine, and we get $8 billion to finish the border. Those numbers are arbitrary, but you get what I mean. And people would have lived with that, but it was just like we're going to give funding for Ukraine with no trades, with no like agreements, nothing. So Matt Gaetz voted to vacate, and Kevin McCarthy was overthrown with the help of the Democrats. And now we have entered into this death spiral of trying to pick a successor speaker. Whatever McCarthy's faults were, he was conservative enough that the conservative wing of the party was willing to give him a chance. And he was pragmatic enough that the centrist and liberal wing of the party was willing to give him a chance. He was really one of the very few compromise candidates they could come up with. Now, Steve Scalise was brought forward, and it looked like he had basically won. From my understanding, he's like a more conservative version of McCarthy, so he was a definite improvement. It was going from like a C to like a B minus or something. It was something, though. Unfortunately, Steve Scalise has cancer, and he decided basically that he couldn't physically handle being speaker because it's such a stressful job, and he withdrew from the race after basically winning. Now, to be fair, that's a legitimate reason to withdraw from the race. I feel bad for the guy. I respect the lack of ego to just step down and go, look, I could write my name in history books, but I know I'm not going to be an effective speaker. So, everybody rallied around Jim Jordan. Now, who is Jim Jordan? I'm not super knowledgeable, but Jim Jordan was one of the founders of the House Freedom Caucus. He's basically a solid populist conservative. He's a MAGA guy. He talked about ethics in video game journalism. I don't know. He just seems like a really nice guy from what I've seen about him. He used to be like a big wrestler in college. And it seemed like he was going to be the next dude who was going to be the next speaker. Now, an interesting thing about the whole Jim Jordan thing is Jim Jordan, as far as I can tell, is very good friends with McCarthy. And a couple people voted for Jordan in the initial fight back in March, but he very strongly endorsed McCarthy and just said, look, I trust McCarthy. It's time for the party to get behind him. And in the recent couple of votes where McCarthy was asked to vacate, he did vote in McCarthy's favor. So as far as I can tell, stuff is cool between them. And McCarthy isn't mad at him for possibly being his successor. I don't think he feels like he stabbed him in the back. Now, who did stab him in the back is a whole bunch of Republican House members are just voting for random people. A bunch of them are voting for McCarthy and Scalise, despite the fact that both of these people have endorsed Jim Jordan, and they both said, like, just vote for him. McCarthy gave like a fairly sincere, decent speech today where he just said, look, Jim Jordan's a good guy. I support him. Stop voting for me and vote for him. I'm not going to become speaker again. This guy's on the level. So people kept voting for him. People kept voting for Steve Scalise, who also voted for him. Then people started voting for Lee Zeldin, and people started voting for McHenry, who's the interim speaker. Now, does McHenry want to become speaker? No. There was one guy who, I forget who it was. Maybe it was something Buck. And he just voted for some random dude because he was like, I hate that guy and I want him to be speaker because it's the shittiest job in Washington. And they only have a margin of error of like 4 voters or something like that. And the last time, like 20 people just voted for some random dude. So the whole thing is just basically going nowhere. The anti Jordan people have not put up their own candidate, and they haven't really stated what they wanted. Because, like, to me, logically speaking, this is kind of how I think it should go. Is the people who have issues with Jordan should go to him and talk to him and come to an agreement. Like if they have a particular thing they want done, if they want him to not do. I think in particular the people from New York who are voting for Zeldin, there's some certain bill there or legislation that they're worried that Jordan's not going to be good on. And I'm like, well, isn't like the adult thing to do? They go to him, they say, we'll support him, but you have to do this for us. And then it's like, okay, and they negotiate, and then they vote for him, and he delivers on what he said. That just seems like the logical, common sense way to kind of go through this, but that's apparently not the case. So we might get into some like memes where we've talked about. They said we're going to get Trump to be speaker. That's one of the ideas that they've come up with, which just sounds completely insane. But I guess like it would be funny. Lee Zeldin's been floated as a possible speaker, um, which honestly I hate to say it because well, for obvious reasons. Honestly, Lee Zeldin wouldn't be a bad VP pick. I don't think he's actually that bad on the issues as far as a member of the tribe from New York is, and he is actually pretty competent, like when it comes to electoral stuff. So he wouldn't make the worst speaker. Um, Maybe they'll just wind up making McCarthy speaker again, and this whole thing will just be one massive waste of time. So that's the situation on Capitol Hill. It's going nowhere. People are just voting for their dog. They're voting for themselves. They're voting for like people who have said that they don't want to run for office. Part of the issue is, unlike normal votes, there's no like shortcut. So everybody has to vote by roll call. So there's what, like 300 people in Congress or something like that. And they have to go through everybody. And even if like enough Republicans vote in a way that'll mean Jordan won't become speaker, they'll still do it. So it's just a complete and total shit show. So hopefully I gave a decent explanation of that. I've been following that a little bit. It's not the primary thing. And yes, Cenk is still running for president, apparently. His website still looks like ass. It's still maybe the worst website I've ever seen. There's still no policy page. There's still no information anywhere on this. It looks like shit, and it makes me kind of want to throw up. It's not good. It's just not good at all. But Cenk is good. He's going to become president, despite the fact that he legally can't become president. Okay, so let's move over to the rest of the world. So, from my understanding, I have not been following the Russo-Ukraine war as carefully because, as we know, the whole thing is over at this point in time. Biden has been. It's over. Putin was defeated. The war is over. It's the end of the world, more or less. Is what's going on with the whole thing in what was it again? As far as I can determine, Russia has just launched kind of a general slow-moving offensive along the entire front. They're heading forward. I forget the exact place they're going for, but they're basically just kind of making steady but slow process. See, the thing with the whole war there is when people say Ukraine's out of ammunition and out of armored vehicles, it doesn't mean they're completely out. It means that their stockpiles are so low and the amount that they're receiving from the U.S. is so low they don't have the ability to take the strategic initiative again, it doesn't mean that they don't have artillery shells. And the issue is they have enough artillery that Russia can't launch a big aero offensive, but not enough to stop Russia. So it's just going to be this long, slow grind. Russia's also found itself to be quite casualty averse. The only real example we have of Russia being of not being casualty averse was Wagner, and that was Prigozhin basically going off and LARPing on his own. The Russian high command didn't even really want to take Bakhmut. It was just supposed to serve as a meat grinder. So, like, the plan behind Bakhmut was they had operationally encircled the city, which means Advayeka, whatever it's called. Next hotspot. Yeah, it's a Donetsk suburb the Ukrainians have been using to shell Donetsk. Yes, that's what it is. So we'll get to Biden in a second. I'm just going to go through some of the Ukraine news. So, so what was I talking about again? Yeah, so the original plan was to operationally encircle Bakhmut. Operational encirclement means they haven't totally encircled it, but they can hit with artillery anything going into it. And the idea was they were going to let small amounts of Ukrainian supplies and soldiers continue to stream in as they kept attacking, destroying them. So the Ukraine thing is just kind of going along, and yeah, it's over. Once again, I think that's important to keep in mind because Israel got attacked. And America has to drop everything to go and save Israel. Because Israel doesn't have an army. Israel doesn't have a weapons industry. It doesn't have weapons. It doesn't have an economy. Israel just needs the U.S. to give them literally everything. They aren't capable of fighting their own wars like a grown-up country. They have to cry like a bitch and get the U.S. to come in and bail them out. Now, to be fair, you might say, well, Argent, you're Canadian, and the U.S. would have to bail you guys out because you guys don't have a functional army. And I'm like, that's true. Canada is our leader is Justo. Justo is like a literal bitch. Justo has taken so many L's in the last 6 months that he's probably happy about the whole Israel war. So that's just kind of going along. We're going to watch a Biden clip. I haven't been able to watch all of it, but it's just like this Schitzoposting stuff where he like talks about how Hamas and it was Hamas and Putin are working together or something, and they're actually the same conflict. And there's this like this. So, yeah, okay. So let's start getting into the Israel stuff. So we had the UCU. Let me see if I can find one of my banners for the UCU. I have to make an ICU one. It's like the UCU one. Where is it? Okay, so we have the UCU, and I've made a whole bunch of logos for this. Ukraine Cinematic Universe. I'm gonna have to make some for the Israeli Cinematic Universe because it's becoming cinematic pretty darn quick. So the UCU underwent a lot of trouble recently. To be honest, it underwent a lot of big issues. The whole like spring offensive kept getting delayed in development hell. Then it became summer offensive. Then it became what's the next one? The fall offensive, and then the offensive didn't go anywhere. And then the offensive was like never supposed to go anywhere, and they still somehow won even though they lost, and all this other stuff happened. So it's not going too well. It's not going too well. The Russian version of the Russian knockoff of the Ukraine cinematic universe is doing pretty good. So the people who were doing the Ukraine cinematic universe, a bunch of them defected, and they're like, "Look, this isn't going anywhere. This failed. The Armenian movie failed. The attempt to make the Serbian Kosovo thing failed, and that didn't go anywhere. Let's start a new project. Let's start a new project." Um, and they've retaken 50% of the victory in the counteroffensive. Could you give me a source for that? I'm going to need a source that shows that in the recent counteroffensive, Ukraine retook 50% of the land still under Russian control. So if you want to post in the chat, I guarantee I will look it up, and we will take a look at it. So let's see here. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the ICU. So yeah, so we have the ICU, and the background to this, if you've been living under a rock, is Hamas launched this huge offensive against Israel. They decided to go in and destroy a whole bunch of Israeli checkpoints. So I just want to so let's take a step back because there's a couple questions I wanted to ask the chat in covering this. So there's a couple different. I think he means the Russians took back 50% of Ukraine's gains from their offensive. Yeah, because Russia, I think, lost 50% of the gains they had initially because they withdrew across the Dnieper to more defensible positions. But we can talk about that later. We're gonna get back to this topic. So I just want to ask the chat, what do you guys think happened? Because there's a couple different theories as to the Hamas attack. So the first theory, and the one that I tend to believe, is it was just complete and total incompetence. That the Israeli intelligence was sleeping on the job. They thought these are like retarded sand savages. They can't launch a coordinated assault. Probably they picked up some stuff from this. Egypt told them, the US told them. Some other stuff like that. And what was I saying again? Well, I completely just lost my train of thought there. So, sorry, give me 1 second while I put my my thoughts back together. Okay, so yeah, so it was complete incompetence. The Israeli government is dealing with all this like other kind of like random shit, these domestic problems, and Hamas just launched the attack, and they completely fucked up. And there's no bigger conspiracy; it's just incompetence. So that's number one. Number two is that the Israeli government somehow got was able to knew about it but decided to let it happen. So there's a couple ways that this could have occurred. The first way is that they thought this was going to be some minor thing. It was maybe going to be a suicide bombing, maybe a couple of rockets, maybe one border post. And maybe decided, you know what, we'll let Hamas launch this little attack. Sure, a couple people might get killed, but it will deal with my various my various political stuff. Is kind of what they were going for. or they knew about the full thing, and Bebe is so cynical and so desperate to remain in power that he decided to just let this entire thing go ahead, have over 1,000 Israelis die, so that he could basically become dictator for life of Israel and launch a total war of extermination against the Palestinians. So I think those are the two major ones. There's also like the schizo theory that Hamas doesn't exist and that Hamas is actually like a creation of the United States and Great Britain and Israel and that it's this fake opposition organization. That's the schizo theory. So I don't know. What do people in the chat think? Press 1 if you think this was incompetence and arrogance. Press 2 if Israel let it happen. Press 3 if Israel secretly planned this from behind the scenes. So I'll just let people vote in the chat. And for people who say to, do you think they knew it was going to be this big, or did they think it might have been a smaller scale attack and they had no idea it was going to be as big as it was? Okay. Okay, so just Google Israel created Hamas. Okay. I don't think so. God says, I don't think anyone expected the attack to be as large as it was. It was probably like a 9/11 scenario where people just thought, yeah, they'll hijack some planes and just demand a ransom, but then they flew them into buildings. Yeah, I think that is the most logical. Yeah. I think the most logical thing is they heard about it, they thought it was going to be some minor thing, but it was this big offense. To be honest, I didn't even realize that like Hamas had this capacity. I always thought that they were just a bunch of retards, like who could maybe like blow up, get women to blow themselves up at blow stuff up at marketplaces, and like behead some people on camera, but really we're just not that competent. I don't know if it's because Iran's been training them, if they've just gotten better over time, but I think it's beyond what I really, I think anyone really expected. The GLA, yes, Hamas has become the Global Liberation Front from CNC generals, um, but they've become suspiciously competent. Okay, so where were we? Okay, so that happened. Let's see, I'm going to put another UCU up. This was like the Command and Conquer looking one. I kind of like that one too. Um, Now, the reason why Hamas did this, I think it's like almost certainly it was trying to stop the normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. Because if that had happened, then the whole Palestinian conflict would become an internal security issue for Israel. It's kind of like what happened after Pashinyan said that Nagorno Karabakh was internal territory and part of Azerbaijan, and that there was no claim to it, and that if Azerbaijan decided to take over, it wasn't an act of aggression against Armenia. It's a bit like that. And I think Hamas did launch this to try to prevent that from happening. Also, maybe just to get some sort of attention to their cause, because they haven't been the current thing for a while now. They haven't been the current thing. So what we've seen since then is more or less a total. Israel's just kind of gone ape shit. They're leveling the West. They're sorry, not the West Bank. They're leveling Gaza. Hamas decided to. Oh no, yeah. Somebody's saying Hamas tried to get them to bait them into attacking them. I mean, that's yeah, like 100%. Hamas knows that this isn't going to destroy Israel. They're trying to bait Israel into leveling Gaza so that they can keep this whole thing going and try to prevent any sort of rapprochement between Israel and the other Arab states. There's also the whole thing with Biden is retarded, and they're probably trying to goad Biden into doing something stupid, which is pretty much what he's going to do. So, that stuff happened. So Israel's just kind of gone complete apeshit from what I've been able to see. They've just been leveling the entirety of Gaza. They said 1 million people have to leave Gaza in like the next 24 hours. Like from northern Gaza to southern Gaza, they all have to move there in 24 hours, or we're going to just start shooting and blowing stuff up. That happened. There was a bunch of hospitals they went to and said you have like 1 hour to evacuate all the people here, and if you don't have them all evacuated in 1 hour, we're gonna blow it up, and just all this other stuff has been going. It's been a pretty brutal invasion. Now you can say correctly so that Hamas brought this upon themselves, that they knew that this is going to happen, and that this is what they were hoping was going to happen, so that they could play the victim. And that is probably true. I don't think there's any real doubt that that was not part of the calculation that Hamas came up with when they were dealing with this. At the same time, though, when we're talking about the Israel-Palestine conflict, one of the problems is I don't really know what the Palestinians are supposed to do other than to do stuff like this, to try to get international attention, to try to get their Arab brothers to give them a hand. Like, I don't really know, like, who else are they supposed to go to for support? They really don't have anything else other than just impotently launching terror attacks. I mean, like, I'm trying to just be honest here. I don't know what else that they really could do other than stuff like this, other than suicide bombings, other than just randomly launching rockets. They don't have tanks. They don't have aircraft. They don't have a large enough standing army. They don't have nuclear weapons. Like, we can say they hide among civilians, but like, where else are they going to go? The West Bank, Gaza is like this fucking giant city. Let's see here. I'm just looking at the chat. So all that stuff is happening. Like I say that just to be like honest. I don't really know what Hamas is supposed to do, like what the Palestinians are supposed to do. I don't really see any other way out of it. There's also, and I say this every time, and I think it's important to point it out, part of the reason this whole crisis exists is because of the other Arab states like it existing. So long as the Palestinians are suffering and they're refugees, they can use Israel as the boogeyman. And anytime there's domestic problems or they're incompetent or something like that, they can just go that they could just like go and use them as a convenient shield and say, oh, well, look at Israel, look at what's going on there. We aren't like actually going to do anything to help the Palestinians. We're just going to like complain about it and talk about how bad it is. We're not going to take them in. I know Jordan took in quite a few, but I mean, the actual probable solution to this would just be if they all went to Egypt. That is probably what the ultimate like final solution to the Palestinian question will be, is they just all wind up getting sent to Egypt. So is Egypt full? But I mean, this thing's been going on for 80 years, and it's just basically nothing's gone anywhere. I think is kind of like partially of what I'm trying to point out. This whole thing is going approximately nowhere. So, what was next on the list of things that I was trying to say? I mean, they could spread them out. Like, I don't see why Egypt couldn't take them in, or just resettle them in Sinai or something like that. I'm not supporting the Palestinians getting kicked out of their land. I'm just saying if the Arab states were really, really wanted um, to deal with this, it could have been dealt with. I mean, Egypt could make a deal with the U.S. They could say to the U.S., they could go to the U.S. and say, "Look, if you pay for the resettlement cost of the Palestinians in Egypt, will take them in. You have to give us trillions of dollars or whatever, or tens of billions, and that would resolve it." Um, I don't know. I don't know. I don't have a solution. I'm just kind of spitballing here. So this leads us to the current crisis that we find ourselves in. The current insane crisis that we are in the middle of, wherein we have. Let's talk about the hospital. Okay, so a couple days ago, I think it was 3 days ago, a Christian hospital in the West Bank got hit, and approximately, I've seen different numbers as to the number of people who died during the hospital. About, I've seen between uh, 300 to 500 seems to be the normal amount that I've seen people guess for the amount of people who died in the hospital strike. So this Christian hospital got hit in Gaza. It got completely leveled. Uh, Hundreds of people died. Hundreds more were injured. Who knows how many like sick and wounded people are going to die because of how many sick and wounded people are going to die because of they don't have access to stuff anymore. Um, so somebody's saying that there was actually 500. There was actually 20 people. As many people, I'll make a compromise. As many people died in the hospital attack as died in the as were beheaded by Hamas, as babies were beheaded by Hamas. That is the compromise that I'm willing to come to with regards to that. What was I thinking of again? Um, so there was hummus. Yeah, so that's where that is at the moment. Um, and basically, this happened, and Biden is still supporting Israel. It was a parking lot. I've heard different things. Some people say it was a parking lot. Some people say it was a hospital. People said all kinds of things. It kind of doesn't really matter, though, what actually happened. The impression throughout the rest of the world, the global south, the Arab world, the Muslim world, is that Israel fired a cruise missile into a hospital on purpose, blew it up, and killed hundreds of people. Um, that is what how it is interpreted. Now, Biden was going to go to Jordan. He was going to have a meeting with King Abdullah. President Sisi was going to be there, and President Abbas was going to be there. Um, what was I thinking? Sorry, I just lost my train of thought there for a. Wow, that was a massive brain fart. So yeah, they were going to have that meeting with Hamas with the various Arab leaders. What wound up happening was the hospital strike happened. There was mass protest all over the Middle East. The thing got called off. The whole what's it called? The whole peace conference got called off. The various Arab states were like, look, we can't meet with Biden after that stuff happened because it looks really bad, and Biden's unconditionally supporting Israel, despite the fact that they, in their view, um, they sorry, I'm tired today. Blew up a hospital, so they can't do that. So they can't do that, and so they got ghosted. Now, apparently, Biden tried to call. Let me pull up a couple of these stories and we can look at them, just so you know I'm not making this stuff up. Let's see here. Okay, so he tried to call a boss, but a boss wouldn't pick up the phone. Like, has this happened to any previous president? Like, I can't think of another president in American history who's been ghosted as much as Biden has. Like, China won't pick up the phone, Russia won't pick up the phone, the Palestinians will pick up the phone, MBS probably won't pick up the phone in Saudi Arabia. Literally, the only person he could talk to is Bibi, and Bibi doesn't even like him. To be to be honest. So, like, how pathetic is it? Like, we have the leader of, like, the supposed free world, the superpower, and they just, like, no, I don't want to talk to you on the phone. Biden officials tried to arrange a phone call between the leaders, but a boss said no. Like, that's kind of, I kind of admire that. I'm not going to lie. I kind of admire the telling Biden to go fuck himself. The other thing I heard is that Biden was not going to have anything productive to say. He was just going to tell them that they needed to suck Israel off, and they just didn't really want to hear it, which I can't really blame them, to be honest. White House confirms won't meet King Abdullah II, Abbas, or President Al Sisi of Egypt after the strike. Biden will no longer travel to Jordan on his high stakes trip to the Middle East. He just went to Israel and gave Bebe a hand job. Was more or less what wound up happening. So that's cool. That's cool. He didn't go to Saudi Arabia either. He didn't go there to meet a boss. Now, what's interesting is I think that Putin was able to get a call with Bibi, Abbas, and Abdullah in like the same day. Let me see here. Putin. Yeah, so Putin was able to call Bibi. Phone call strongly rejected and condemned any violence against civilians. So Bibi would pick up Putin's phone call, but Abbas would not pick up Biden's. He also talked with, yeah. So okay, so Putin in one day talked with Sisi, Abbas, Assad, and Bibi in one day. He was somehow able to talk to all the people, the major players in this conflict. But Russia is completely isolated, guys. No one will talk to Russia. No one will talk to Russia, even though the people who didn't talk to us talk to Russia. And it's not like Jordan is Syria or some historic enemy. Jordan's been like a friend of Britain and in the United States. They've been like one of their best friends, and they won't talk to them. Egypt, likewise, has been one of America's best friends for the last couple decades, and they're telling them to fuck off too. So it's like, it's one thing if Assad just goes Biden or some other people. Yeah, he also talked to Iran. Yeah, he also called the president of Iran. The president of Iran took his call. So, I mean, you can You can see that however you wish. I'm not trying to say like Russia's like this global bringer of peace. I'm just saying that like the people who involved would actually, yeah. What's also interesting is isn't Hamas theoretically like against Putin? Because Hamas sided with like ISIS and Al Qaeda, didn't they? In the war against the Syrian government. Like, so, and Syria is like the BFF of Russia. So Putin's somehow able to have more of a working relationship with the Palestinians, despite possibly killing them directly with his army, than the U.S. is. I don't know. It's fucking weird. This whole thing's insane. So the U.S. has also been sending in a huge number of soldiers to the Middle East. Now, I know that they've sent two carrier air groups. I also just want to make it clear when I talk about these things, I'm not like necessarily praising Putin as much as I'm saying like how much of a clusterfuck like Biden is and how fucked the West is. Like, can you see like these guys not taking Kennedy or Nixon or Reagan's phone calls? Could you see like a boss just telling Reagan to go fuck himself? Could you see King Abdullah saying, "No, I'm not going to meet with you," to Reagan? And I'm not a huge Reagan fan, but like the fact that Biden just keeps getting humiliated. Like there's that whole thing where he tried to meet with Xi for months, and then Xi just kept making fun of him. Also, like, has Russia and the U.S. even talked since the start of the Ukraine thing? Like, if Kennedy was president, they would be on the phone every day. They would, yeah, they take Trump's calls. I mean, so the thing with Trump, and I'll say this, is Trump is probably the most pro-Israeli president in history. But I think Trump at least understood that part of winning is allowing your opponent to save face. Um, yeah, part of winning is allowing your opponent to save face. So it would be okay. You make your opponent back down, but you give them something. You make it look like it was a mutual agreement. Um, they get something. It doesn't look like it's a humiliation. They're allowed to save face. Like I think the whole Taiwan current crisis could probably have been resolved just by throwing China a bone. Like obviously, I am fairly pro Taiwan, so I don't think they should allow China to. I actually don't mind that as much as some of America's other foreign commitments, but they could have just tried to come up to some sort of agreement with China, like maybe there's closer ties between the mainland and Taiwan, or they introduce some new like cross-strait cooperation or something. There's a big photo op. Biden, Xi, and whoever the president of Taiwan is shake hands and they go home. Like, I feel they could have done that, and I think Trump probably would do something like that. And both sides could declare victory and go home. Um, so yeah. So yeah. So the U.S. has been sending carrier air groups to Israel. I think they've also been sending a lot of ground forces as well. So people are really wondering, like, what is the U.S. doing with all this stuff? I mean, let's pretend that they're there to protect Israel from Hamas. Does Israel really need protection from Hamas? Because at the end of the day, Hamas doesn't have nuclear weapons. Hamas doesn't have like an air force. They don't have tanks. They don't have heavy artillery. They are a asymmetrical guerrilla group. So, why does the U.S. need to send in carrier air groups? Like, why do they have to come to save Israel? Israel can't deal with like Also, just the sense of entitlement that Israel has, like that they're owed the U.S. just giving them a bunch of shit. So Biden is going to be giving $61 billion in aid to Ukraine, $14 billion in aid to Israel, and $7 billion in aid to Taiwan. But to get the Republicans to pass it, there's going to be some security money in the uh, border. Okay, so it's 19,000 soldiers and 2 to 3 carrier strike groups. Okay, so I don't really. A concern people are having now is what if Biden decides to invade Syria? Like, we don't know what the fuck is even going to happen. We'll get to the missiles later. We'll get to the missiles later because that's like a whole other thing about this. So America's moving stuff in. Like, can you imagine what would happen if the U.S. started bombing Gaza? Or if they just started attacking Syria? I think one of the funniest things to come out of this entire thing was how Israel just decided to lob missiles at Syria. Like, I don't even think Syria was a party to this conflict, and they just lobbed a bunch of missiles at Syria and blew holes in its two largest airports. Um, just that's just how Israel works. We just attack third parties. Okay, Yemen is in a civil war. Syria is recovering from a civil war. Um, Iran probably could do something, but it's not geographically connected to it. Libya, I don't even know what the fuck's going on in Libya. I've tried numerous times to try to figure out what the hell's going on in Libya, and I'm gonna be honest, I just can't. It's so complicated. It's so confusing. There's so many moving parts. So yeah, there's that whole aspect of it. Okay, so Libya. Yeah. So like yeah, okay. So let's see what we can. There's stuff that people are coming from Syria and Iraq and Lebanon to fight in the Gaza Strip. So I don't know what's going to happen. The U.S. isn't really doing anything to de-escalate it. Israel's not doing anything to de-escalate it. The Arab countries aren't doing anything to de-escalate it. I think the only person who probably doesn't want a total war in this case is Russia. I mean, if anything, this has been a great boon to Russia because everyone's basically forgotten that the Ukraine war even exists, and they've been able to just start going on the offensive themselves. Well, all this random stuff is just going around in the Middle East. So there's another interesting kind of story. So the U.S. has basically become a party to this war. Let me see here. So apparently the Houthis, or however you pronounce it, in Surf's just been busy with IRL stuff. He's just been busy with IRL stuff. He's perfectly fine. As I said, I visited him in the summer. We played Left 4 Dead. We played Halo. Um, we hung around and watched Scooby Doo movies and Godzilla. Was tension spiking in the Middle East? Okay, so Yemen, the Yemeni rebels were launching missiles at Israel. The U.S. shot them down though. So isn't that kind of a yeah? Earlier, the U.S. intercepted 3 land attack cruise missiles and several drones that were launched by Houthi forces in Yemen. So they destroyed the military assets of a third party in this conflict. That's not getting involved though. It's not getting involved at all. I don't know why anyone would claim that that is them getting involved in this war. So basically, everything is just kind of fucked at the moment. But we're gonna go in and we're gonna watch Biden's Schitzopost. We're gonna have like a forefront war. We're gonna have a war with China. We're gonna have a war with Syria. We're gonna have a war with um, Iraq, Iran, Yemen, Saudi Arabia. Let's fucking go. Okay, so let's watch this schizo speech.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. We're facing an inflection point in history. One of those moments where the decisions we make today are going to determine the future for decades to come. That's what I'd like to talk with you about tonight.
He kind of looks like one of those aliens from Mars Attacks, doesn't he? Doesn't he? Like the way his head is? It kind of reminds me of that a little bit. Like the weird ass proportions, the wrinkles. I don't know.
You know, early this morning I returned from Israel. They tell me I'm the first American president to travel there during the war. I met with the Prime Minister and members of his cabinet. And most movingly,
the first president there to travel during the war. Well, like how long did most of these? Well, okay, well it depends how you define a war. Firstly, and secondly, I mean you had like the 6 Day War. Was Dixon supposed to go there during the 6 days?
I met with Israelis who had personally lived through horrific horror of the attack by Hamas on the 7th of October. More than 1,300 people slaughtered.
Not a single piece of skin in his forehead is moved. It looks like he's wearing a fucking death mask.
Slaughtered in Israel, including at least 32 American citizens. Scores of innocents, from infants to the elderly grandparents. Israelis, Americans taken hostage. As I told the families of Americans being held captive by Hamas, we're pursuing every avenue to bring their loved ones home.
We're deploying Delta Force. And okay, we kind of fucked up. We posted pictures of Delta Force. We doxed our own special forces, but it's
As president, there is no higher priority for me than the safety of Americans held hostage.
Except for the ones that the cartels are holding hostage. That doesn't matter. That's okay.
The terrorist group Hamas unleashed pure, unadulterated evil in the world. But sadly, the Jewish people know perhaps better than anyone that there is no limit to the depravity of people when they want to inflict pain on others.
Well, I mean, they would know. I definitely agree the Jewish people would understand the concept of inflicting pain on other people. They would understand that. I mean, once again, like he didn't give a speech for the Armenians when they got kicked out of Artsakh. They got kicked out. They lost their homeland again. This I can't say that on YouTube.
In Israel, I saw people who are strong, determined, resilient, and also angry, in shock and in deep, deep pain. I also spoke with President Abbas, the Palestinian Authority.
No, you didn't? Wait a minute. What the fuck? I thought he didn't speak with him.
And reiterated that the United States remains committed to the Palestinian people's right to dignity and to self-determination. The actions of Hamas terrorists don't take that right away.
Well, I mean, they do, because, like, so I want to ask the chat, how far is Israel going to go? Like, is Israel literally going to, is Israel going to, like, literally ethnically cleanse them and just kick them out at this point in time? Are they going to just siege it till they, like, either just flee to Egypt or they starve them into submission? Or I don't know, because I feel like this time they're going to go full balls to the wall. I could be wrong. I could. It's fucking like, okay, someone's saying total Palestinian death. I don't know.
Like so many other, I'm heartbroken by the tragic loss of Palestinian life, including the explosion at the hospital in Gaza.
No, you aren't. You probably, like, were aroused by it. Okay, I'm gonna have to take a picture of this. It looks like Biden is doing something with his Depends here. So this will be the. I just need to screenshot this. What is this creature?
which was not done by the Israelis. We mourn every innocent life lost. We can't ignore the humanity.
We know that the Israelis didn't do it. We know that the Israelis didn't blow up the hospital. Actually, sorry, that was something else I wanted to talk about. So, what do you guys think happened with the hospital? So, there's four main possibilities, I think. Firstly, Israel deliberately blew up the hospital as a way of fucking with Hamas, as a way of scaring them and trying to get people to leave, and just killing Palestinians because they could. That's number one. Number two, Israel accidentally hit the hospital. One of their missiles or bombs went off target, or they tried to hit something nearby. Number three, Hamas accidentally hit the building. One of its rockets or whatever, like the guidance system failed, or it just crashed down and blew it up. And number four, Hamas deliberately blew it up as a false flag. So, people, tell me what you think happened in the chat. I honestly don't know which one it was, to be honest. I don't know if it was... I tend to think that either Israel did it deliberately, or it was an accident. It was accidental on the part of Hamas. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, part of the problem with this, and this happens constantly in Ukraine, is war is really messy. War is exceedingly messy. A lot of these smart bombs and missiles and glide bombs and all this stuff, it fails all the time. It just constantly, some of it does. Keep in mind, and this is something like most people don't think of, when they were shooting at planes that were flying over cities in World War II, those shells fragments came down, and a lot of people died from that. There was almost, in some cases, more damage from the flak than from the actual bombs from the aircraft. And this happens all the time in Ukraine. Like, the Ukrainians will say that Russia blew up a building, and then what it'll turn out was Russia was attacking something else, and the Ukrainians launched an air defense missile, and the air defense missile missed and hit a building. And I'm sure Russia's hit lots of buildings by accident too. I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying we don't really know, and this being a accident and not deliberate is a very high possibility. I don't know. I haven't seen definitive evidence one way or another. It kind of doesn't really matter at this point in time. But that's my thinking. I mean, there was that. Okay, so there was that thing that was circulating with the supposed Netanyahu spokesman who bragged about hitting the hospital. Now, I was going to do a video on it, but I could not find the original source for it. I couldn't find it on Wayback Machine. And I've seen too many cases where this stuff is so I don't know. So we're getting it. There was no hospital. So that's the fifth option. It didn't hit a hospital. It hit the parking lot, and there was no deaths. So that's the other option here, that we can go with. I'm just gonna say I'm agnostic. I don't know what happened. It's, to a certain extent, it's kind of irrelevant because most people, depending on which side they take in this conflict, will just blame who they want to blame. And I don't know. I'm sorry if that makes it sound like I'm just straddling the fence, but this has happened so many times in the Ukraine episode, during the Ukraine war. This has happened so many times in all kinds of different wars, wherein The fog of war is immense. So I don't know.
Of innocent Palestinians who only want to live in peace and have an opportunity. You know, the assault on Israel echoes nearly 20 months of war, tragedy, and brutality inflicted on the people of Ukraine, people that were very badly hurt.
That's it, guys. It's the same thing. Abbas is Putin. Hamas is United Russia. It's the same thing. How long till we get Wagner trained Hamas? I have not seen Wagner train Hamas yet, but I'm sure it's coming.
Since Putin launched his all-out invasion. We've not forgotten the mass graves, the bodies found bearing signs of torture, rape used as a weapon by the Russians.
It's like a Holocaust. It was like, actually, I don't know where the narrative is going here, because he's minimizing the suffering of the Israelis by saying what happened in Ukraine is comparable.
And thousands of Ukrainian children forcibly taken into Russia, stolen from their parents. It's sick.
Okay, I don't get this whole idea that them evacuating children out of a war zone is evil. I don't get it. Apparently, you should leave the kids in the war zone.
Hamas and Putin represent different threats, but they share this in common. They both want to completely annihilate a neighboring democracy, completely annihilate it. Hamas.
I mean, Ukraine isn't a democracy. Let's not and people were like, well, Argent, it's based that Ukraine is killing their is banning religions and banning political parties and censoring the media. Yeah, but I'm not claiming that they're a democracy. Ukraine is not in any sense of the term. They banned they banned the largest political party. They banned all kinds of political parties. They banned certain denominations of Christianity. They arrest people who criticize the government. They just kidnap people and send them to the front lines. All kinds of insane shit happened. They blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. They aren't a democracy. Depends on how you call it democracy. Now, as for Israel, Israel's a democracy if apartheid South Africa is a democracy.
It's a stated purpose for existing.
Which I think it was, but that's the side.
Is the destruction of the state of Israel and the murder of Jewish people. Hamas does not represent the Palestinian people.
How is Hamas going to destroy Israel? Okay, I want someone to post in the chat how Hamas could physically destroy Israel. How that's even possible. The only thing I can think of is maybe if the ISI in Pakistan gave them atomics and they planted them. Maybe. I don't know how they physically would though.
Hamas uses Palestinian civilians as human shields, and innocent Palestinian families are suffering greatly because of them.
Well, Israel uses the Holocaust as a shield.
Meanwhile, Putin denies Ukraine has or ever had real statehood. He claims the Soviet Union created Ukraine. And just 2 weeks ago, he told the world that if the United States...
I mean, did Ukraine have statehood prior to... I guess under the Kievan Rus, but I don't know.
States and our allies withdraw, and if the United States withdraw, our allies will as well. What? Military support for Ukraine would have, quote, a week left to live, but we're not withdrawing.
Okay, I just want to go back, because that was Shakespeare. This is Shakespeare, what Biden's saying here, and this man runs the free world.
Ukraine. And just 2 weeks ago, he told the world that if the United States and our allies withdraw, and if the United States withdraw, our allies will as well, military support for Ukraine would have, quote, a week left to live, but we're not withdrawing. I know these conflicts can seem far away, and it's natural to ask, why does this matter to America?
I don't know, I couldn't really follow that.
So let me share with you why making sure Israel and Ukraine succeed is vital for America's national security.
And securing the border is not, and that isn't.
You know, history has taught us that when terrorists don't pay a price for their terror, when dictators don't pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos and death and more destruction. They keep going.
What is with his eyes? I don't know. I don't think he looks like a human being, to be honest.
And the cost and the threats to America and the world keep rising.
What threats?
So if we don't stop Putin's appetite for power and control in Ukraine, he won't limit himself just to Ukraine. Putin's already threatened to remind, quote, remind Poland that their Western land was a gift from Russia.
Well, it kind of
One of his top advisors, a former president of Russia, has called Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania Russia's Baltic provinces.
Medvedev likes to shitpost. Medvedev is one of the better shitposters on Twitter. He just posts like the most insane shit, like impossible. The Kievan Rus is Russian, Ukrainian, and Belarusian. Well, they were just kind of all one people. So, I mean, there's a reason why.
These are all NATO allies. For 75 years, NATO has kept peace in Europe and has been the cornerstone of American security. And if Putin attacks a NATO ally, we will defend every inch of NATO which the treaty requires and calls for.
Like, what NATO ally? Is he talking about Estonia? Is he talking about Poland? I don't know, guys. Does anyone here, I could be wrong, maybe I'm just naive. I don't think Putin wants to, like, go to war with NATO. Like, has Putin ever said that? Has Russia ever indicated that they want to go to war with another nuclear power? I don't know. I just don't think Putin's retarded. Like, I don't think he wants to go to war with Poland. I don't think he wants to go to war with Estonia. Is there some saber rattling? Is there some, like, dick waving? Yeah, but NATO's dick waved too. It's just something that happens. But I don't think, like, Russia wants a hot war with the U.S. They don't want a hot war with another nuclear power.
We'll have something that we do not seek. Make it clear, we do not seek. We do not seek to have American troops fighting in Russia.
You do, though. You do. You've talked about it so many times. Like, breaking the whole thing up. Like, dude, you're talking about
fighting against Russia. Beyond Europe, we know that our allies, and maybe most importantly our adversaries and competitors, are watching. They're watching our response in Ukraine as well. And if we walk away and let Putin erase Ukraine's independence, would-be aggressors around the world would be emboldened to try the same. The risk of conflict and chaos could spread in other parts of the world, in the Indo-Pacific, in the Middle East.
Yeah, what about the fucking Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh? What did you do when the dictator of Azerbaijan went in and ethnically cleansed 100,000 people, who basically forced them all to fucking leave? What did you do then, Biden? You did shit. Because you just want to worship Israel. That's it. You just want to worship Israel, a country that has nuclear weapons, a country that has an army, a country that has all this stuff, and you don't give two shits about people who are actually suffering. You don't give two shits about it, like, actual. It's Israel only has nuclear weapons.
Middle East, especially in the Middle East. Iran is supporting Russia in Ukraine, and is supporting Hamas and other terrorist groups in the region.
Wait a minute. Let's go back. Here's the Schitzopost. Let's listen to the Schitzopost.
Spread in other parts of the world, in the Indo-Pacific, in the Middle East, especially in the Middle East. Iran is supporting Russia in Ukraine, and is supporting Hamas and other terrorist groups in the region, and will continue to hold them accountable, I might add. The United States...
Okay, did any of that, like, make sense? I felt like there was multiple unfinished ideas.
And our partners across the region are working to build a better future for the Middle East. One where the Middle East is more stable, better connected to its neighbors, and through innovative projects like the India-Middle East-Europe Rail Corridor that I announced this year at the summit of
the India-Middle East-Europe Rail Corridor,
the world's biggest economies. More predictable markets, more employment, less rage, less grievances, less war.
So, Iran supporting Russia means that Russia is buying things from Iran. I think there's a couple types of drones that Iran mass produces that Russia buys. Now, people make fun of the fact that Russia buys stuff from North Korea. And they're like, well, Russia's so desperate they're buying stuff from North Korea. And it's just like, well, is there any scenario that having more ammo is not good? Like, is there any scenario where having more artillery shells than you need is not like better? Um, I don't know. Like so they bought like I don't know. They bought some shells from North Korea. If the shells work and they're cheap, why not? That doesn't mean Russia's necessarily running out of ammunition. It's always better to have more ammunition.
Connected. It benefits the people who would benefit the people of the Middle East and would benefit us. American leadership is what holds the world together. American alliances are what keep us, America, safe.
Dude, you've showed zero leadership on anything.
American values are what make us a partner that other nations want to work with.
Dude, that's the exact opposite. No one wants to work with you. Literally, no one wants to work with you guys. They used to want to work with you guys. It was like being an American ally during the Cold War was awesome. You just had to say that communists were F slurs. You had to say capitalism was awesome, and they would give you money, and they'd give you military support, and you could join NATO or you could join one of these other organizations, and it would be awesome. But now you're like, okay, if you want to like even talk to us, you have to legalize gay marriage, you have to have post-birth abortion, you have to have unlimited immigration, you have to abandon your entire traditional culture and suck Israel's dick and do absolutely everything we tell you to do and richly humiliate yourselves before we'll do business with you. And I say this as someone who doesn't even hate America. It doesn't even hate like what America used to be like. But it's just bullshit. Like, when is the last time that the US has had a diplomatic win? What was the last time a country who didn't like the US became their friends? When was the last time like America signed a big trade deal or negotiated something? Like the closest we got was Trump. Trying to deal with the North Korea thing, and everyone attacked him and mocked him for that. At least he was trying. The thing is, no one wants to do business with you because you're a snake. And you're a snake who's not even motivated by profit. Like, the Chinese are snakes, don't get me wrong. I don't like China. The Chinese are massive snakes. But the Chinese are at least motivated by something rational. They want money. They want resources. They want to make China economy strong. You don't want that. You have this fucking insane, like, global homo thing that you're trying to push on people. You know what this kind of reminds me of, and I need to do a review on this game, but I don't know if any of you guys have played Suzerain here. Awesome game, definitely recommend it. But one of the things that you can do in Suzerain is you can ally with the ATO, the whatever it is, treaty organization. But basically it's like NATO. And they're just like, all you have to do to join is just join our collective security pact. If we go to war, you go to war. And we'll provide you with military training and support and weapons and stuff like that. And it's a really good deal. And they don't ask you to change anything about your internal political system. They just ask you to say that communists are F-slurs, which I'm okay with it.
To put all that at risk, if we walk away from Ukraine, if we turn our backs on Israel, it's just not worth it.
And also, once again, how much money did these fuckers send to Hawaii? I haven't seen. If someone in the chat can maybe tell me, how much did this piece of shit give to the people of Hawaii when their state got burned to the fucking ground? I can guarantee it was nowhere near as much as Ukraine and Israel get. How much did East Palestine, ironically enough, get when that train crashed and the whole area was full of toxic waste? I don't think it was anywhere near what they gave to Ukraine and Israel. Like,
that's why tomorrow I'm going to send to Congress an urgent budget request to fund America's national security needs, to support our critical partners, including Israel and Ukraine. It's a smart investment that's going to...
Was it just $700 a person or something? Like, didn't they send a bigger aid package? Like, we forgot about Hawaii and 1-8. Okay, let's just do some math here. Okay, so Hawaii. Let's see what the population is. of Hawaii. The population of Hawaii is 1.4 million people. Okay. So let's take $100 billion and divide that by 1.4 million. So, unless my math is completely schizo, couldn't they have given each Hawaiian like 70 grand for the amount of money that they're sending in this one aid package? Couldn't they have just rebuilt literally everybody's homes? Um, like, love your neighbor. Love your neighbor is. I mean, this is once again the whole like liberal worldview. Love your neighbor doesn't mean like liberal Christian worldview. It doesn't mean loving your family. It doesn't mean loving the people in your neighborhood, your city, your province, your country. It means like allowing random Africans to move to your country and rape everybody.
Pay dividends for American security for generations. Help us keep American troops out of harm's way. Help us build a world that is safer, more peaceful, more prosperous for our children and grandchildren. In Israel, we must make sure that they have what they need to protect their people today and always. The security package I'm sending to Congress and asking Congress to do is an unprecedented commitment to Israel's security that will sharpen Israel's qualitative military edge, which we've committed to, the qualitative military edge. We're going to make sure Iron Dome continues to guard the skies over Israel. We're going to make sure other hostile actors in the region know that Israel is stronger than ever and prevent this conflict from spreading. Look, at the same time, President Netanyahu and I discussed again yesterday.
Okay, let's look at this. This is the fucking sort of weak sauce that we get out of the Biden administration. Okay, so this is a recent publication by FEMA. Biden-Harris admin sends nearly 1,000 federal first responders to Hawaii. FEMA has approved $5.6 billion in assistance to nearly 2,000 households, including more than $2.3 billion in rental assistance. It's a good job, guys. It's a good job. That's a lot of money you gave to Hawaii. Wow. Survivors may be approved for a one-time immediate payment of $700 for critical assistance. It's just like they might get $10 million by the time this whole thing's over. That's Biden for you.
The critical need for Israel to operate by the laws of war. That means protecting civilians in combat as best as they can. The people of Gaza urgently need food.
I never said that God didn't make Africans. I said that the liberal Christian idea of love your neighbor is literally just importing like Somalis and having them like rape the women in your country. I don't understand how that makes me claim that black people don't have sex.
Water and medicine. Yesterday, in discussions with the leaders of Israel and Egypt, I secured an agreement for the first shipment of humanitarian assistance from the United Nations to Palestinian civilians in Gaza. If Hamas does not divert or steal these shipments, we're going to provide an opening for sustained delivery of life-saving humanitarian assistance for the Palestinians. As I said in Israel, as hard as it is, we cannot give up on.
Does anyone remember, and this was like the most keynote thing I think Trump's ever done, when the East Palestine disaster happened and Trump bought like a bunch of like food and water out of his own like pocket, and he went there and he like gave the people, and he bought like all the first responders like McDonald's and stuff like that. That was like
peace. We cannot give up on a two-state solution. Israel and Palestinians equally deserve to live in safety, dignity, and peace. You know, and here at home, we have to be honest.
God says, has Biden's eyes gotten smaller throughout this, or am I tripping? What happened to his left eye? Like, what is that? Like, what? I don't know, guys. Can I get a physiognomy check here?
honest with ourselves. In recent years, too much hate has given too much oxygen, fueling racism, the rise of anti-Semitism and Islamic phobia right here in America. It's also intensified in the wake of recent events that led to the horrific threats and attacks that both shock us and break our hearts. On October 7th, terror attacks have triggered deep scars and terrible memories in the Jewish community.
Oh, the 6th Gorillion. Oh, the 1200 died. It's like another Shoah. No other people in human history have suffered. Like, once again, the Armenian people don't have nukes. The Armenian people don't have an air force. They don't have any of this shit. And they got kicked out. Like, there's plenty of other places. Sudan's going through a genocide, is going through a total civil war. Afghanistan's still a clusterfuck. Dude, there's so many places in the world where people are suffering who don't have a tenth of the things that the Israeli people have.
Today, Jewish families worried about being targeted in school, wearing symbols of their face, walking down the street.
Okay, this fucking... Yeah, I'm gonna file that under shit that didn't happen. Really? Like, that's a big thing in the U.S.? Like, they just attack random Jews?
We're going out about their daily lives. You know, I know many of you in the Muslim American community, the Arab American community, the Palestinian American community, and so many others are outraged and heartened, saying to yourselves, here we go again with Islam.
But, like... So let me just, because I know I have to say this. Am I defending, like, Hamas, like, killing a bunch of civilians? No. I'm just saying that the whole, like, Israel's the only country in history to suffer thing. The whole, like, no other people in the world matter. The whole no one else has faced discrimination. Dude, what fucking Middle Eastern Christians have gone through is horrendous. What they continue to go through. The fact that so many of them have fled to Latin America and Europe and other parts of the world, what the cops go through in Egypt. Once again, these people the cops don't have their own state. They don't have their own nuclear weapons. The Assyrians don't. When ISIS was beheading them, like, we say, oh, well, some Israelis got killed. Yeah, but the Israelis have tanks. They have jet fighters. You didn't give two shits about the
Islamophobia and distrust we saw after 9/11. Just last week, a mother was brutally stabbed. A little boy, here in the United States, a little boy who just turned 6 years old was murdered in their home outside of Chicago. His name was Wadiha. Home outside of Chicago. His name was Wadiha, a proud American, a proud Palestinian American family. We can't stand by and stand silent when this happens. We must, without equivocation, denounce anti-Semitism. We must also, without equivocation, denounce Islamophobia. And to all you hurting, those of you hurting, I want you to know I see you. You belong. And I want to say this to you. You're all America. You're all America. This is in a moment, there's, you know...
What is he even doing? He's just like... oh, sorry, just coughing. Like, this is fucking, like, insane. Do you guys see why I said this is Biden's Schitzoposting?
Proud American, a proud Palestinian American family. We can't stand by and stand silent when this happens. We must, without equivocation, denounce anti-Semitism. We must also, without equivocation, denounce Islamophobia. And to all you hurting, those of you hurting, I want you to know I see you. You belong. And I want to say this to you. You're all America. You're all America. This is in a moment, there's, you know, in moments like these, when fear and suspicion, anger and rage run.
That, I don't know, that actually kind of creeped me out. It was like he was fucking possessed there. Like, it's just, this is the dude who's running the world, guys. This is the president of the United States. This is the guy who they want to, like, to serve another 4 years. And it's just so Giesler. Like this whole, oh, people are mentally ill if they like are concerned about Islam or something like that.
Run hard, that we have to work harder than ever to hold on to the values that make us who we are. We're a nation of religious freedom, freedom of expression. We all have a right to debate and disagree without fear of being targeted in schools or workplaces or in our communities.
What? Dude, this is the exact opposite of what your party believes in. It's the exact opposite. What about all those people who got like arrested over Jan 6th? That was speech. Like, what the fuck is he even talking about?
Harder than ever to hold on to the values that make us who we are. We're a nation of religious freedom, freedom of expression. We all have a right to debate and disagree without fear of being targeted in schools or workplaces or in our communities. I must renounce violence and vitriol. See each other not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. When I was in Israel yesterday, I said that when America experienced the hell of 9/11, we felt enraged as well. While we sought and got justice, we made mistakes.
Like, what is this? The Rays 9/11 as well. It's just got just. Rain's sitting on the back of my chair, and she's like, "What the fuck are you watching?"
So I caution the government of Israel not to be blinded by rage.
X to doubt. Shit that never happened.
And here in America, let us not forget who we are. We reject all forms of hate, whether against Muslim, Jews, or anyone.
What? You hate? Like, what?
That's what.
Dude, you gave, like, does no one remember the speech he gave, like, where he looked like Satan, and he was talking about how MAGA was evil, and, like, MAGA's a threat to democracy, and, like, we have to get rid of MAGA? Does no one remember that?
That's what great nations do, and we are a great nation.
No, great nations, like, kill their enemies.
On Ukraine, I'm asking Congress to make sure we can continue to send Ukraine the weapons they need to defend themselves and their country without interruption, so Ukraine can stop Putin's brutality in Ukraine. They are succeeding. When Putin invaded Ukraine, he thought he would take Kyiv and all of Ukraine in a matter of days.
It's Kiev. Stop pandering to this retarded renaming of stuff.
Well, over a year later, Putin has failed, and he continues to fail. Kyiv still stands because of the bravery of the Ukrainian people. Ukraine has regained more than 50% of the territory Russian troops once occupied, backed by U.S.-led coalition.
How did the counteroffensive go, Joe? That was a big success.
Coalition of more than 50 countries around the world, all doing its part to support Kyiv. What would happen if we walked away? We are the essential nation. Meanwhile, Putin has turned to Iran and North Korea to buy attack drones and ammunition to terrorize Ukrainian cities and people. From the outset, I've said I will not send American troops to fight in Ukraine.
Well, like, I don't get, like, okay, so once again, you can think whatever you want about Iran and North Korea. I'm not a fan of North Korea. I'm not one of these, like, best Korea guys. But I don't get, like, why... I don't get, like, why it's... They bought weapons from countries that were producing weapons.
Ukraine. All Ukraine is asking for is help. For the weapons, munitions, the capacity, the capability to push invading Russian forces off their land, and the air defense systems to shoot down Russian missiles before they destroy Ukrainian cities. Let me be clear about something. We send Ukrainian equipment sitting in our stockpiles. And when we use the money allocated by Congress, we use it to replenish our own stores, our own stockpiles with new equipment. Equipment that defends America and is made in America. Patriot missiles for air defense batteries, made in Arizona. Artillery shells manufactured in 12 states across the country, in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas.
I'm not going to lie, guys, I'm actually tripping balls right now. I'm actually like starting to get like, I feel like I'm on acid. I feel like this is a bad trip.
Equipment that defends America and is made in America. Patriot missiles for air defense batteries, made in Arizona. Artillery shells manufactured in 12 states across the country, in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Texas, and so much more. You know, just as in World War II, today patriotic American workers are building the arsenal of democracy and serving the cause of freedom. Let me close with this. Earlier this year, I boarded Air Force One for a secret flight to Poland.
Okay, I wanna do a okay, I want to pull the chat. If Russia and Biden were going to have referendums tomorrow, so with complete 100% transparency, no voter intimidation or whoever, who is more likely to win a approval? Okay, so sorry. There is a referendum as to whether or not you want somebody to continue on as president. Biden or Putin. And there was no vote rigging. There was no lack of ethics in video game journalism. Who's more likely to succeed in the referendum, Putin or Biden? Let's just think about that for a minute. It's more likely if there was a referendum to allow them to continue as president. Who is more likely to win? Like, dude, okay, let's assume that there was ethics in video game journalism. Like, Putin has a much higher percentage of support of the Russian people than you do. Like, it's not even a question. It's, dude, no one likes you. No one.
There I boarded a train with blacked out windows for a 10-hour ride each way to keep.
Man, that's amazing.
I boarded Air Force One for a secret flight to Poland. There I boarded a train.
It's over. He went to Poland and he went on a train.
With blacked out windows for a 10-hour ride each way to Kyiv, to stand with the people of Ukraine ahead of the one-year anniversary of their brave fight against Putin. I'm told I was the first American to enter a war zone not controlled by the United States military since President Lincoln. With me.
The first American? Wait, the first, did he say first American?
Not controlled Putin. I'm told I was the first American to enter a war zone not controlled by the United States military since President Lincoln.
First American. The first American. I think he meant the first American president, but I don't know.
With me was just a small group of security personnel and a few advisors. But when I exited that train and met Zelensky, President Zelensky, I didn't feel alone. I was bringing with me the idea of America, the promise of America, to the people who are today fighting for the same things we fought for 250 years ago: freedom, independence, self-determination. And as I walked through Kyiv with President Zelensky.
When did the Potsdam Conference happen? Was that before the armistice? When did Germany surrender? I'm just trying to, because I think the Potsdam Conference was before. Oh no, Potsdam was after. I'm sorry, that's my bad. I'm wrong. I'm 100%. I'm 100% wrong. Okay, no, that was my bad.
The air raid sirens sounding in the distance, I felt something I've always believed, more strongly than ever before. America is a beacon to the world. Still. Whereas my friend Madeleine Albright said, the indispensable nation. Tonight, there are innocent people all over the world who hope because of us, who believe in a better life because of us, who are desperate not to be forgotten by us and are waiting for us. But time is of the essence. I know we have our divisions at home. We have to get past them. We can't let petty, partisan, angry politics get in the way of our responsibilities as a great nation. We cannot and will not let terrorists like Hamas and tyrants like Putin win. I refuse to let that happen. In moments like these, we have to remember who we are. We are the United States of America. The United States of America. And there is nothing beyond our capacity if we do it together. My fellow Americans, thank you for your time. May God bless you all. And may God protect our troops.
That we're going to be sending in to Ukraine and Palestine. It's like, what do you even say to that? Like, that was just like full on schizoposting there. Like, okay, so let's just be fair. Let me just stop bullshit for a second. Let me just stop making fun of this. It's not even necessarily that I agree or disagree with him. It's just the incoherent, like, rambling, the weird thing where he says a bunch of words, like, under his breath. It's just fucked. Like, okay, but, like, Bush was... Okay, so, but here's the thing. Bush was a smart guy who was acting dumber than he was. Biden's a dumb guy... I don't know where I'm going with this to be honest. This does remind me of something. This is like the greatest thing of all time. Let me find it. Let me see if I can find it. Here we go.
But resist, we must.
They're all jitty.
Oh, okay. Oh, here we go.
Tonight is the measure of whether the country begins in the state of Wisconsin a national drive to push back, or whether we have more to go to build a movement of resistance. But resist, we must, and we will much about that be committed.
Exactly. I think that he really summed the whole thing up. Resist, we must, we much, and we will must about that be committed. So, ladies and gentlemen, on this 2-hour stream, I think we covered just about everything I had. I hope you enjoyed it. By the way, do you guys want me? Is it better like if I cut these up into segments once they're done? Like I cut this up into the Ukraine part, the Israel part, the part at the beginning where I talk about the Republicans. Let me know if you want me to do that. Then it's good for me because it means I can spread out the content more. I can get more views. So that's about it. So God bless everybody. Have a good weekend. Just remember,